digging even deeper on so many of the opportunities we have in North America to make a difference on behalf of women and girls. My name is Katherine Cleland, and I am a member of the Zonta Club of Everett, Washington, right outside of Seattle. I am proud to be the District 8 Advocacy Chair and a member of the Zonta USA Caucus. We're going to start today's program with a little treat that was developed by the USA Caucus to help answer that perennial question we all get is, how could we do advocacy? I thought we weren't partisan. So our committee on the Zonta USA Caucus developed this great video that is currently available online on YouTube. It's linked to from the zontausa.org website, and you can share it on social media or play it at a club or district meeting, or I suggest you play this at your district conferences. Oh, we're not hearing the sound. Is there a way to? Uh-oh, I did something wrong. Oh, there we go. There you go. I love that tool. Okay. See if I can. Well, I'm close, but I'm going to need tech support to help me get back to the PowerPoint in the right mode. Okay, great. Super. So I've been asked several times. Oh. Okay, tech, how do we manage an echo? Better? Okay, I won't get too close to the mic. I'll stand back. So I've been asked several times, why was this session called Strategy? Whoop, is this auto forwarding? Strategy Session Part 2. And the answer is because the introduction of the educational and awareness campaign, the billboard campaign, and the public service announcement was considered by us at USA Caucus to be part 1 of a strategy to end child marriage, because you have to first educate and get awareness before you can move to action. And so this strategy session is all about using the tools we have, the knowledge we have, and getting some more and moving to that phase 2, strategy and action. So speaking of which, oh, no, my little clicky here is not wanting to click. Do that. Okay. We have a lot of ways for Zontans to take action. And one of the things that we were talking about at USA Caucus and with Megan at headquarters is that we have our voter voice Fast Action Fridays. We have thousands of people who get this email every other Friday. We have only hundreds who actually take action. So we are looking for two things from our districts and our clubs, and that is to encourage more people to sign up for Fast Action Fridays, but especially to encourage them to take action every other Friday. It's a new issue every other Friday, and the USA Caucus has actually filled up a buffer where we have issues every other Friday now for 20 weeks rolling. And we're bringing new ones in as our subcommittees are coming up to speed. And the more people who take action, the more difference we're going to make at the national level on our policies. So to add to our Fast Action Fridays, for those of you who have your cell phone and are texting capable, please take out your cell phone now and text Zonta to 50457, and you will receive those Fast Action Friday notifications on your cell phone and be able to take action directly from your phone with no more than a minute's worth of typing. That's texting Zonta to 50457, and you will get advocacy alerts from Zonta on Fast Action Fridays. Yes, you can send them to friends. You can forward those actions via Messenger, whatever message system you use. Okay, we've got a jam-packed workshop today. We are so looking forward to working with you. What we're trying to do today, if you want to take away anything from this workshop, it's about centering survivors and their experiences. Most important thing we want to do today, and we have Donna Pollard, who's going to be our keynote speaker. We have yet to see Donna, so we think she's caught in traffic somewhere. So oh, she's here. Yeah. Oh. We need 1 minute technical break for our wonderful tech support team who's working with Zoom and with us to try and do a virtual live. 1 minute. Oh my gosh. It's texting Zonta to 50457. Is that correct? 50457.
Won't be able to see the slide. Okay. You'll have to be like this.
Okay. We'll handle it.
There is a
One more second.
Have any Canadians had trouble texting my number?
So we're going to be centering survivors
Catherine?
and their experience, and Donna Pollard will.
Okay, the number that you just gave, I have a question here. Has any Canadians had trouble texting the number?
Ah, that is a USA number. That's text for USA. My apologies to those who are on the Zoom meeting.
Okay.
We do not yet have a Canadian caucus, and we do not yet have a toolkit for Canada advocacy similar to what we've been able to develop in the United States. But my understanding is there's work being done on a Canadian caucus. Then what we want to do today is get you at your table to work with people from your state or district to end child marriage in your state and ultimately in the United States. We're going to do more education on that child marriage is happening here, an update on the billboard and PSA campaign. We're going to give you information about allies and how to partner in creating your own end child marriage coalition in your state, and then some tips on advocating and how to pressure your legislature. So the model that we came up with working with Donna as we developed this workshop Centers ending child marriage in the center with the survivor's experience. We're then looking at the bills, current and past bills in our own state or location, and then building out a network that includes survivors, partners, legislators, and understanding our opponents. This is the structure that we'll be working towards today. And we're working towards protecting girls and boys who are married before the age of 18. We're looking for effective legislation that passes, but Zonta USA Caucus is standing for a bright line of age 18, no exceptions. That is our negotiating position. That's where we go in. That's where we want to hold the line. But politics is messy. Politics is always messy. And sometimes a partial win is better than nothing at all. And so we trust and empower state level coalitions to decide what is feasible and workable on behalf of protecting girls and boys in their state. Let's see if I can get this to move now. Oh, look at that, we got arrows. Okay, no Donna yet, so we will move into Ela and have her share an update. Ela is the USA Caucus co-convener, and she is the representative for Zonta USA on the End Child Marriage Coalition and is on the steering team for the National End Child Marriage Coalition.
Thank you. It's been an honor to work with someone like Katherine, and I'm learning so much from her. And of course, Zonta is always a source of education. I'm Ela Pandya from Zonta Club of Porterville, California, District 9, and honored to be here. So what is National Coalition to End Child Marriage? It's a group of organizations and survivors working together towards a common goal of eliminating child marriage in the United States. And the defined goal for the coalition is 18 bright line, 18 no exceptions. So Unchained at last started in 2011. It was started by Freddie Rice, a survivor of child marriage. And later on, Unchained at Last and Equality Now together formed the coalition. It is Zonta USA Caucus joined the coalition in early 2019 upon approval of the ZI board. The members are, these are not all, there are many, many more members, and they also allow survivors, if they're passionate to work towards eliminating child marriage, they are also welcome to join the coalition. So the steering committee consists of Unchained at Last, a representative from Unchained at Last, the AHA Foundation, a representative from American Atheist, Zonta USA Caucus, and one survivor from California. So about 5 or 6 members on the steering committee. The steering committee keeps informed about the legislations proposed, pending, stuck in various states, as well as the ones that in the states where there is a potential, there is some legislator somewhere who is sympathetic to this idea, and then we can encourage them to propose a bill. And when there is a potential to work with in some state where we can, put all join our efforts to get things rolling, is when we reach out to, at least in Zonta, we reach out to all the clubs in that particular state, and we form a state level coalition. It's been a great experience because when we as a member of a club in any state, for example, in Porterville, I mean, what can we do? Not much, or we think we can't do much. But once we join the coalition, the USA caucus representative, and I'm sure you're aware of what is Zonta USA caucus, yeah? So the caucus representative then reaches out to the clubs in their district, and suddenly we are part of this big, powerful group, and we get to learn about reaching out to the legislators and their offices and writing postcards and signing petitions and even signing up to do a virtual hearing participation. And all of a sudden, you're not alone. You are a power that they need to reckon with, because we have seen the success that because of the coalition efforts that we have gained. Oh, I moved too fast. Okay, yeah. So what's the status of child marriage in the United States? According to the recent study, there are about 30,000 children who were married between the age of 2000 and 2008, within the years 2000 and 2018. And this is the data from only 38 states. There was no information available from 12 states. For example, in California, the counties were not even tracking and keeping, records of marriages. My club tried to work on that, but the county said, we have no information for you. About 86% of the minors that were married in the United States are girls. And that's what matters to us. That's the fact that 86% of them are girls is Zonta's mission, right? We want to empower girls and put them in a position where they can attain their full potential and not be married when they are a minor. So that's where our passion comes in. 1,000 of those girls were age 14. That's pretty young. They don't even know what marriage is, but probably it's also a forced marriage where they are raped and they're pregnant and the parent says, this is the best solution, Even now, today in the United States also, forget the countries like India and Eastern countries where culture defines the role of a woman and the honor sits in the woman's purity. Even in America, there are parents who will have their 14-year-old get married so that they don't look like they didn't have control over their child or they didn't raise their child right. 5 of those girls were also only 10 years old. Yeah, that's pretty upsetting. So what are the consequences of child marriage? I mean, these are pretty obvious things, right? I mean, once you are married, you get into a situation where education doesn't remain a priority. If you're not educated, you're not going to get a job that pays well. You're very likely to get into a domestic violence kind of situation or even a rape, or sometimes rape is the reason why you are in that marriage. Of course, sexually transmitted diseases. I mean, Zonta worked on obstetric fistula in Liberia, right? Those young girls having babies, their bodies are not ready. And here we are having 14 years old, 10 years old getting married. They suffer the same kind of physical health consequences of this situation. So Unchained has done a lot of research. International Center for Research on Women, Tahiri Justice Center, Survivors Corner from Donna Pollard started. They all have done a lot of research and have come to these conclusions, which are pretty much common sense, but it's good that they did that, so the statistics backs us up on what we are saying. Yeah. It's pretty disgusting when you think you have to explain to someone, please don't allow child marriage, because you know what? She won't be able to finish school. I mean, that's like ridiculous to even have to say an obvious thing. But yet that's why we are united here to learn how we are going to say that. So like I said, ICRW, they have done a very in-depth research, and you can access their report online. All right, so why is it happening? Why is child marriage happening in the United States? Zonta has given, what, $2 million for 12 countries to eliminate child marriage or stop the acceleration of child marriage or accelerate the reduction of child marriage. But the US was not a part of that because we don't think it happens in the United States. Well, the problem with USA is that each state can make its own laws. So first of all, there is no uniformity in the laws. And the second problem is that child marriage is when a marriage happens at an age less than 18. But the age of maturity in every state is 18, except Puerto Rico, I think. And so you can marry if you're not mature, but you can't file for divorce. You can't go to a shelter and be protected because you have to go, you're not 18, so you have to go with your mother. And of course, if your mother was taking care of you, you wouldn't need a shelter, or the mother is supporting your child marriage and all that. So this is the big problem here, that there is no federal control over the child marriage laws. And then there's discrepancy in the age. Basically no age limit for child marriage versus the age of maturity when all your human rights as a human you can claim, that comes at 18. So that creates a complication in the United States. In majority of the states involved, if you were not in a situation where you get raped and you want to complain about rape, it's a rape. But if you're 14 and 15 and you are raped and you are married to your rapist, then that rapist Freddie calls it get out of jail free card. That's her favorite thing to say. That basically child marriage, because of the way we have the laws, allows a rapist to be protected under the law. This is Canada. Let me skip that. Here's a good example. Are we reading about Canada? Yeah. Okay. Over 3,600 marriage certificates were issued to children under the age of 18 between 2000 and 2018. I think just like we have states, Canada has provinces. And so they're going to have to work on their province level. I'm not sure if the child marriage law is different in each province. I'm not aware of that information.
The laws and statistics are different from each province. And so this is a very recent study that was done by professors at McGill University in Canada on provincial incidents of child marriage province by province. And the details for all of our Canadians who are on Zoom are in your Dropbox handout and the Dropbox folder, as well as links to that original research article. So we encourage all of our Canadians to spend some time in there during our breakout session.
Thank you, Catherine. So this is a good example of someone, a 17-year-old from Kentucky, read online that a 49-year-old and a 17-year-old, they read online that North Carolina. So there are 3 states, including Nevada, where it was very common that they would issue marriage licenses to an out-of-state people. So Nevada in 2019 passed a law, and now that has gone down. They don't allow out of town people because each state has different laws. Some states are much more easier to get marriage licenses for minors than others. And so this is a good example of how the discrepancy between different states also facilitates child marriage. And I think I put information about each state, information about the laws in each state you have on the table. So there's one for Nevada on District 9. But that's interesting to know and learn that what's happening in your state, what are the laws and the statistics. So that would be your foundation from which we can build on. All right, successes. So until 2017, 50 states, every state you could have a minor married. Then in 2017 or later part of early 18, Delaware became the first state to pass the Bright Line legislation. Then came New Jersey, Minnesota, Pennsylvania, then Minnesota, and very recently Rhode Island. So we are 5 down. Yes, we are 5 down and what, 45 to go? New York just, yeah.
Yeah, that's
New
what I was
York
gonna
just
mention.
passed, but we are waiting for Governor Cuomo to
Yeah,
sign.
Exactly.
Yes, so that will make us make it 6.
There was also a large success in North Carolina. And this is where the 18 Bright Line is very, very important to Zonta USA Caucus. But North Carolina had long been considered a destination state for child marriages. People were coming from out of state to very lenient county clerks in North Carolina to have many of these younger age child marriages. And is Donna here? Donna was in North Carolina speaking to this issue in front of the North Carolina legislature. They had a law proposed for 18 Bright Line, and they were able to get a compromise bill of 16 years old and a minimum age difference between the girl and her husband, because again, it's mostly girls. And it passed and was signed into law. So North Carolina still has child marriage at 16, but it is no longer going to be a destination location for child marriages, which is a huge win.
And I think they reduced the difference between the age. So the husband cannot be way more in age than the young bride. So that in itself helps also. I think Michigan is a problem. Denise is here. They worked so hard. The coalition built a Michigan coalition, and Denise and her people in Michigan, they worked so hard to get it going. And somehow the secretary did not bring the bill to the discussion table. And now it is tabled for the legislative session of 2022. So I think they have to start over and find some new and better strategies to make it work.
Nevertheless, she persisted.
All right. That's the next slide, yes. Okay, so next focus is going to be on New York, the governor to sign, Michigan. Yeah. Who? New York signed, he signed it? Yay. 6, we have 6 now, yes. All right, so next 5 states
Just a
to
minute,
work.
Ela. if you have something to say, please go over to the microphone and make your comment so that everybody else can hear you. Thank you.
So the comment that wasn't at the microphone was from our table from New York, and Teresa Harris stated that the governor did sign the New York legislation to ban child marriage. New York is an excellent example of going at it again. When you think about the Bright Line, they had already passed legislation in the past 5 years to raise the minimum age to 17, and the coalition did not get up, and they've gone back and they now have 18 Bright Line legislation passed.
So these are the next 5 states that we will focus on in the coming year. I think for each state, the information, like I said, is on your desk. And if anyone wants a specific detail about their state and the status of advocacy, please email me and I can provide you more information. Fast Action Fridays. Katherine already discussed that. So please, 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 we want to increase the numbers on this. We want to, it's just natural, right? If 5 people write to somebody and 500 people write to somebody, somewhere along the line, it's going to get noticed. And this is not limited to Zonta. You can spread it to all your network of friends and coworkers and relatives, just school. I mean, I give it to my future daughter-in-law who is a teacher, and I always forward them to her, and then she forwards them to all the teachers in her school. So it has to spread like wildfire. This is, in my mind, this is a war. And we've been fighting for 100 years. I mean, we haven't even passed ERA yet. So, I mean, all these things need to happen. We have to see that in our lifetime or die trying. But yeah, I mean, please, please, please respond to the Fast Action Fridays.
But Ela, this is your opportunity to talk about the bill for immigrant brides.
Yeah. So I'm getting to that. Okay. Yeah. Well, it's titled Fast Action Friday, so I have to go back to that. So the immigration law indirectly allows child marriage and human trafficking in the United States because federal government doesn't want to address child marriage, and the immigration department issues visas for spouse visa and fiance visa. So what happens then? I mean, if you can't marry a 15-year-old from India or Pakistan, then you go to Pakistan, get married, apply for a spouse visa, and there you are in the United States. It makes human trafficking very easy. It's just another name for human trafficking. So there have been some bills proposed in the federal government. Here it says 5,000 cases of adults petitioning for visas on behalf of minors. And so there have been laws, but we have done one Fast Action Friday on that, right? For immigration law.
I thought one was passed, but one is still pending.
No, Fast Action.
That's what this is.
Yeah. But we're not able to do it because of complications that come from, they say, well, what if the girl coming from abroad is from a refugee camp and the situation over there is worse than what it would be here. And those kind of things make it very complicated and political for us to have a solid immigration, reform. Okay, HR 1606. In March, Representative Van Taylor proposed a resolution to close the information gap which fosters the practice of child marriage. And that proposal requires the secretary to study the status of child marriage in the United States. So the Unchained at Last worked with the Office of Representative Moore to draft a letter requesting funding for this study. And we delineated all the things we want them to, all the information we want from them, the immigration, how many young girls came under immigration visa, how many, I think Alaska has the military
Exemption.
yeah. So all these things, all these specific details, we drafted a letter on behalf of Representative Moore's office, and we'll be requesting a funding from the Health and Human Services budget for this study to move forward. So that is the latest in what's happening in the United States. And more will come when all of us get together and start working on it. Thank you.
Has Donna arrived? No. Okay, we've lost our keynote speaker centering survivors, and I can't tell any survivor stories. So I'm going to pivot to where I'm most comfortable. So many of you know me from the time I was the Public Relations Communications PRNC Chair for Zonta International. And one of the reasons I got involved in child marriage is because I saw the opportunity for information and education. And so I wanted to report back a little bit about how well we've done this past year and the opportunities we have to step up our game in raising awareness of the fact that child marriage still happens in the United States. So our public service announcements, which was originally called the Billboard campaign with UNICEF USA, is still ongoing. So we encourage every club and every district to continue to put up billboards and use the PSA materials. Through the end of 2022, our agreement has been extended to because we see it making traction, but a lot more opportunity. The greatest use I've seen of the PSA campaign is actually digital signs. It's much easier to talk to a media company, a convention center, an airport, any organization that has a digital sign that's visible to rotate in a public service announcement. And so that's where we're seeing a lot of traction with visibility of our billboards. We also are seeing some traction with our social media campaign, getting folks to the stopchildmarriages.org. But we encourage you to find other PSA opportunities and be creative. Get your public relations and communications team involved, because advocacy and public relations together is a win-win in terms of education leading to action. So that's what we're looking for. I'll remind you, even though everyone here probably knows, that the toolkit is available on zontausa.org #PSA toolkit. In there, you will find links to all of the full-size artwork, as well as the social media artwork, suggested uses, a 101 about billboards and digital billboards, as well as hashtags and information for using the PSA campaign on your social media. Here's an example of a GIF where she's actually moving. That's a social media. Did everybody see that? I'm going to go backwards and do it again. So this was developed by the UNICEF team and the Zonta International Headquarters office as one of our graphics. And it's very catching because she's moving. So if you get on a digital billboard or social media and you put, it's a .gif, it's called. It's a small file, but has motion in it, and it attracts a great deal of attention. This is an example of the kind of assets that are there in the PSA toolkit that we encourage you to use. Here's the toolkit page and what it looks like. You can see the big red button at the top that says click for large file artwork. That's all you need to do to give the artwork to a billboard company or someone to make a banner. And then all the toolkit downloads are down the right-hand side, as well as variants of the artwork that are available. I ask you to remember, as you use the PSA on social media, always provide a link to where someone can learn more and take action. Link them to stopchildmarriages.org because that has the additional educational information that makes this a legitimate PSA as opposed to a political ad. But it also has buried in it the link to the UNICEF Zonta USA action page. What happens when someone fills out the form on the action page, either on their desktop or on their phone, is it sends a letter to their state representatives based on their address. So it'll find who their representatives are, and then it gives them the opportunity to send a tweet if they have a Twitter account automatically. And in that tweet, it will @ their representatives. So it will go directly to and be visible to that representative. And at the state level, most representatives don't have social media staffers. They do their own social media. And so getting a flurry of tweets can attract their attention and get them to pay attention to what they've just gotten in their inbox. I was talking to Deborah from Minnesota in the Zonta store, and she said that she had at their St. Cloud meeting had pulled together, she brought in postcards for every one of her members and asked them to send a letter to their representative. She had cheat sheets as to what their addresses were and had them in a club meeting sit down and send a message. You can do that, and you can use this artwork to print postcards at any digital print shop. Pick the image that you want, have the message on the back that asks your representative to support legislation. If you have a bill number, that's great. If not, ask them to sponsor the bill. So we have a lot of educational materials still available. Here's some successes, and what I want to do is invite all of you to send me your successes or send them to pr@zonta.org so we can keep track of them. But in Annapolis, Maryland, we've got a banner on the left-hand side that's at the entrance to the city. In Orange County, Southern California, they did bus placards. It was a great program. Yakima, Washington did a digital billboard in a very purple district to great effect. Everett, Washington worked with a local Native American tribe that had a digital billboard and also got this billboard in downtown Everett. And in Orange County, we also had a digital billboard. The digital billboards don't always photograph particularly well, but they look great in person. And this is where we're finding a lot of our success. We're going to be pivoting to doing some billboards or social media or both, specifically in Massachusetts and South Carolina as our next priorities, because we believe right now those two states are ripe for change. Their sponsors in the legislature, and a little bit of education and awareness is going to do a lot to raise the public outcry and support the people working on the ground doing that advocacy. And that's a lot of what we're doing. But the PSAs also give visibility to Zonta. It lets people in our communities know what Zonta is doing, who we are, what we stand for. And in communities that have worked hard on some of these education campaigns, we're seeing rising visibility and respect for Zonta. So we encourage you to get involved. And here are examples of the PR and social media campaigns. So how's it going? I'm a marketer, but I like metrics. So here's my graph. And this is the stopchildmarriages.org web visits over time. You can see at the launch of the campaign, we had a huge number of visits, well over 500 in April of 2020. And since then, we have dropped to less than 200 visits to that website a month. That tells me we still have a real opportunity to raise awareness and raise education. So I would really love to see those numbers double or triple with the work in our districts and our clubs, getting people to that website to get the information. The slides that you saw here that Ela just presented are all available on that website. All of this information is in summary form on that website for general consumption. And at the actunicefusa.org, child marriage, we saw a big peak in November of 2020 when UNICEF USA did their End Child Marriage program and sent people to that website. But in general, we're seeing very few actions per month. And we've got a real opportunity with our mailing lists and our outreach to do a lot more. So I'm going to ask you to please step it up. We also have lots of further watching and reading. There's a must-see that Unchained at Last did a great town hall hosted by Chelsea Clinton last week on the status of child marriage in the US. She had 5 senators on that meeting, and it is outstanding. Again, it would be a great program meeting for a club or a watch at home and then come and discuss Zoom meeting for a club activity, or you could even use it as a preamble or something at breakfast at a district convention and have this town hall playing in the background on a large screen. In a room like this, as people ate, people could pay attention, listen in. It's a longer meeting, but it's very, very good. There was also just last week in the New York Times an opinion piece by Nicholas Kristof, who is the one who Half the Sky author, and he wrote on child marriages. 14-year-old bride read to her rapist playing on a jungle gym. Speaks exactly to these issues. It came right on the heels of that town hall and is raising awareness nationally of child marriage. So we're playing right now into a rising tide, and we need to make that tide continue to rise higher and higher, because it supports the work then that we will all do as activists in our state capitals. And that's what we're going to be speaking to next. Anybody seen Donna? If not, I'll keep on going. Okay, so pivoting to state strategy to end child marriage. This is where we really get to the part 2. What we're going to do is work collaboratively in a coalition, centering survivors and talking to partners. But we're going to do our research first to compile the information. What we have to understand as clubs, states, and districts is who are the players and what has happened in the past. We can't go in assuming that there's a clean slate. We have to assume there's a messy history around child marriage. And the more we understand that going in, and the better our plan is going to be. And so that's what we're going to focus on today. So what we want you to do is think about who are the survivors and what is the survivor network in your state or your community? Who are the partners in your state and your community? End child marriage, Unchained at Last, is stronger in many of the West Coast states, not necessarily as present in some of the Western and Southern states. Tarira Justice Center is more active in some states than others. So there's a patchwork of partners that we're going to want to work with. And what we've got is some of the tools for you to work at your table, to sit down and dig into. If you have your phone and can connect it to the internet, either by cell or through the Wi-Fi here. Does everyone know the Wi-Fi here? Have people found the Wi-Fi? No, don't do it, or do it. I'm seeing okay, give me the Wi-Fi. 1 second. Okay, I'm going to give you a chance to get on the Wi-Fi. The conference Wi-Fi is, the username is Hilton with a capital H, free, all one word, Hilton free. And the password is Hilton1. One is in the number 1, not spelled out, and that's all one word. And the Hilton1 is lowercase. Let me know if that's working for you. See some nods around the room. Okay, so hello. So the process is the first thing we do is we talk to the survivors. We find out who they are, we center them, we understand their stories. We talk to the partners. We understand where they're coming from, what their issues, intentions, and their bright lines are, and how they like to work. And sometimes that's an uncomfortable bedfellow, as Ela mentioned earlier. When you're doing politics, you're not always 100% aligned with all of the positions a group you may work with on a particular issue is. And that's okay, as long as you make it clear you're not endorsing the organization, you're endorsing a position or policy. And that gets back to Zonta's guidelines for doing advocacy, is we are always working to endorse a position or policy. Then what you need to do is in your coalition, work collaboratively to plan which committee in the House and the Senate. The myriad names and different types of committees that exist state by state is absolutely baffling. As I've learned about New York State, learned about Michigan, learned about Washington State, learned about North Carolina, getting into which committee deals with women and children, which is mostly where end child marriage would end up. You need to find that committee, but in some states, it's actually in a rules or other operating committee because it's oversight over the county clerks and the county clerk offices. So it really depends on your state to understand which committee. And then once you understand your committee, you actually have to dive into the voting backgrounds of every committee member to figure out who might be a sponsor in that committee for your legislation. And you're going to work with that individual. In parallel with that work, you're going to be prepping and delivering both the survivor stories and the facts that are available. And again, those facts are available at the zontausa.org website. They're available at Unchained at Last website. They're available at the Tahira Justice Center website. The handouts on your page, on your table, a page for each state, is information from the Tahira Justice Center that are the current laws and bills that exist in each state that they have compiled. There's actually on the back table the detail of that 60-page document for every state in the union if somebody wants to look at it as a reference. The ICRW that Ela showed the cover of is linked to from the zontausa.org and child marriage website, has all of the statistics and facts in an academic format that are very credible that you can use. Then what you're going to do is meet with that staffer of that sponsor, and you're going to start proposing bills. You're going to want to find model legislation or past bills that have been introduced in your state and propose bills to staffers who then have to get sponsors online. Then you get the bill introduced into a committee, testify in favor. You've got public service announcements, public relations. LTE is letters to the editor, and messaging to build support after you've recruited others. And the entire time you're understanding who your opponents are, what their messages are, how they're organized, so you can counter any messages they have. And then that big gray box differs state by state is all the work that needs to be done over time, because this is a marathon, not a sprint. We're going to keep working at it. And oftentimes you have to get sponsors in a committee over years of cultivation. And that's what we want to do, is start meeting the people and cultivating those legislators and partners and survivors to work with. So we're going to have more time than planned to break y'all out and have you work on understanding your environment. So there is handouts at every table. Yes, Ela? Ela has a suggestion first.
We were planning to do this, but in trying to be more time efficient, we had decided to remove that from our plan. But we would like to hear from you if any one of you has ever encountered a situation in your life, met somebody, you know, had to help somebody, any which way exposed to the child marriage situation. No? You haven't met anyone who was, oh, there she is, okay.
This is a little embarrassing, but so my name is Bridget Masters. I'm from Colorado. My mother ran away with her boyfriend when she was 14 years old, and they ran away to a state that allowed underage marriage. When she came back home, my grandmother was afraid to make her annul the marriage because she was afraid they'd run away and she'd never see her again. So they stayed married, and by the time a week before my mom turned 18, she had her third child. So yeah.
Hold on. Does she? No, I'm just curious. Does she talk about it? I mean, what has she reflected on it? Like, I'm just curious.
Yeah, it really pretty much destroyed her life. When she did go back home, she did try to finish school, but it was very difficult because now she had a name change. So she sat someplace different in the classroom, and she just felt very different than the other kids. The marriage, of course, didn't work. So she ended up being a single parent with 3 small children at a very young age. And back in those days, it was very bad to be on welfare, public assistance. So she was kind of ostracized by the community. She did later go on to get her GED, and she became a licensed practical nurse. So she was able to forward her life, but it had really affected who she was and how she felt about who she was. And it really did impact the rest of her life. So. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, thank you for sharing that. Yeah. She probably told you every day, don't get married so young. Thank you. That's a. Anyone else? No?
I'm Jean French from the state of Washington, but I'm a member of the USA One Club. So I can't believe that every woman over 60 in this room can't tell pretty much the same story. My mother got married at 16. Her folks were gypsies, so, well, not literally gypsies, but they left 2 girls with the grandmother to be raised. So they don't have a very stable home life. And, you know, dad romanced mom. He was 23, she was 16. I'm a honeymoon baby, 9 months to the date from the honeymoon. I accused her that she had slept with him before because I could do the math. I was pretty smart at 13, just so you know. And boy, did she slap me silly. I didn't find out until I was in my 20s that her father, Grandpa Burdick, was a functional alcoholic. And so within just a year or so after mother got married at age 16, her younger sister at age 14 or 15 ran across, I was in Oklahoma, or we were all in Oklahoma, and they went to the state of Arkansas. And all I can remember from my teens is that, you know, you go to another state, and if you stay married for 3 days, I don't think they can annul it. Anyway, that was some of the old laws back in the old days. So, and mother had 3 kids. The 3rd kid by the time she was 21, and she had her 4th child at age 25. And of course, she didn't finish high school because back in those days, you didn't go to school pregnant. And I was starting college. Yeah, I was starting college, and of course, I'm old enough that everybody got married right out of high school. And I had no prospects, so God, I had to go to college. What else do you do? I mean, didn't we all go to college to get our MRS? Thank you. So, so mother says, well, why do you think you need to have a college education? And I said, well, mother, why did you go? She did correspondence school and got a full real high school diploma at age 25 before she had that 4th kid, because she knew when she had that 4th one, she was totally done for. And I said, why did you have to get a high school education? She goes, well, everybody has their high school education. And I said, well, mother, in my society, everyone will have their college degree. So there you go.
Hello, my name is Mrinalini Rao. I'm a treasurer of Zonta Club of Cleveland, District 5. And I grew up in India, and I have seen a couple of instances child marriages. My mother was a pediatrician, and so I remember at a time, the school I went to was close to home, and a lot of teachers who worked lived in the neighborhood, as well as administrative staff and the cleaning staff. And some of them were my mother's patients. And I remember one day, one of our cleaning staff, she came in with her daughter, and her daughter was about my age. And I must have been like 13 or 14. And she came in, and that girl was carrying a small baby in her hand. And that was the first time I remember seeing her with a baby. And I was so shocked to see her with the baby. And more importantly, I remember my mother being really upset and mad at that cleaning service lady for having married off her daughter. And not only that, the girl had a baby now at 13. And that made such an impression on me. And the second time I saw was a girl who worked as a maid in our house, was probably around my age too. And she had gone back to her family. And then at the age of 15, one day I was coming back from school, and I suddenly bumped into this girl. And she came running out of nowhere from another house. And she said, "Hey, hi, remember me?" And she's like, "I'm married now." And I was 15, she was 15. And again, it was like, it hit me again, like, what are their parents thinking? They're just children, I feel like a child. Why are they marrying her off when she's no different than me? It struck with me, and I realized, I'm different because my parents are educated. And that made a huge difference in my life. And so I made sure, all through my undergrad or my graduate studies, my roommates, my friends, I always advised everybody, when I knew that they had a serious boyfriend and they were, very serious about it, I would always advise them, do not quit school just to get married. Get married if you want to, but continue getting your education. I think that's very important, and I have tried to pass that on to my kids as well, to let them know that education is your way out of, to grow. That is the way every generation can grow. So you have to do your part, not only educating yourself, but educating the society around you when you see such things happen, so that it's not continued forward. So I think it's very important for all of us to take the child marriage seriously and do our part to end the child marriage, or at least bring it to like 18, like you said, to bring it to a reasonable age group where, young kids are not affected. Thank you.
Excuse me. There is a comment on the chat box, and I would like to read that. Joanna Shoemaker, Zonta Club of Lebanon. My mother got pregnant during her senior year of high school, not sure of her age. She wasn't married. She graduated, but wasn't allowed to participate in the graduation ceremony with her senior class. Of course, the man, father of the child, was allowed to graduate in the ceremony.
Yep. Oh, go ahead.
Hi,
That was in 1954-55.
hi, my name is Nola Tice, and I'm with the Sanibel Captiva Zonta Club. And I'm proud to say that along with other members of our club, we really initiated a lot of the work that's been done through Zonta in human trafficking starting in 2006. I think. And so I met many victims who had come from Guatemala and other countries, many of whom, the most famous one, the one that came first into our view, was about, I think, 13 years old and had actually had a child in Guatemala already. And then she got pregnant again. And the parents actually were not that upset about it because she had already caused them some grief by having the first child. And the first child unfortunately died, and they made her sit with the baby body for a few days because somehow that was her fault. And she was, of course, not married and had gotten pregnant by one of the men in the village. And then they had a terrible time getting here, and he did all the usual stuff, none of which we were familiar with, but suddenly we became familiar. So we dealt with I never dealt directly with victims because I'm not qualified to deal directly with victims, but I heard a bazillion stories, and I did get to know a number of young women. And so that was my experience with human trafficking. However, when Karen just nudged me to get up here, suddenly I had this flashback in a way. When I was in 1980, I started a home-based business. And in that business, we were working out of my house. I had 2 little kids, and it was I know this is weird, but I will get to the story. Translating knitting instructions from other languages for foreign yarn companies, turning into writing books on that and whatever. And I needed some women who could come in and knit because we needed prototypes and also to do other work of proofreading and whatever. Well, one of the women that I put up a card, this is home-based business, and women did not work if they were working from home in 1980. But I not only worked there, but I got 4 other women working for me. And I put up a card at the grocery store, and I got a young man who called and said, my mother is a really good knitter, but she doesn't have a job, and I think I need to bring her over. So this 15, 16-year-old boy brought his mom over, and I met her, and he went home with yarn and instructions. She knit a sweater. He told me later that she ripped it out and did it again because she didn't think it was good enough. And she came in and she knit for me for a while. And then things got rolling and we were translating, and I needed somebody who could check the math and whatever. She had no high school education, and she worked for me, and we proofread these things. We did all kinds of stuff. She did photography. I mean, we just were going. And so that was great. And after 11 years, we moved. We decided to move, and she needed another job. And one of the other ladies who had an education, at least partial education in college, she got a job with the county, and she got this lady a job because we got her through her high school education. And we got another woman who quit and got married at 18, and she didn't go to college, and we figured out how to get her college credits. So, but I realized that Diane is a victim of child marriage up in the mountains of Virginia. And it's only when she got out and away and her kids could help her that they did. So that's my story.
Yes,
So I
Venus.
thought I'd tell you a little bit about Wyoming. I don't
Yes.
personally know any child brides, although our club has really struggled with this because we have so many 18 people in our club that got married at 18 and 19 and said, you know, if we could have earlier, we would have. It's a bit of a challenge. But So recently, and some of you may have seen this, but for those of you that haven't, it was in the national news. We have a state representative who has announced that he wants to run against Congresswoman Cheney. Like half the state wants to run against Congresswoman Cheney right now. And so a story came out that when he was 18, he had gotten his girlfriend pregnant. She was 14. And the only good news about this was they were in Florida at the time rather than Wyoming, I guess. But is that, and so as was the era, they went off and in Florida got married. And his comment is really the telling part though. So here's the quote from his interview. So bottom line, it's a story when I was young, 2 teenagers, girl gets pregnant. You've heard those stories before. She was a little younger than me. So it's like Romeo and Juliet. So, yeah, and she had a son, and she was dead by the age of 21, and he goes on with his life as a politician. So,
Yeah, I mean, these are the kind of people we're gonna have to deal with to convince them that they were wrong. You know, it's okay. Like we heard the stories from India. You know, in India, we don't have a framework of social welfare kind of a system. We don't have social security for retired people. We don't have food stamps. We don't have, you know, temporary help from the government. I mean, right now with COVID, so many girls quit jobs because they got so much money from the government in California. We don't have that in India. So if a girl gets pregnant, I don't want to say it's okay, but I can understand that they would think, well, the best solution is to get her married because also honor is an issue. But here in the United States, we have such a beautiful structure of, you know, support. Why would we force anyone to get married because they're pregnant? You know, that's just very stupid reason to say you're pregnant, so you have to get married. I mean, so we have to fight that. We really have to. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Lee Fogarty, Zonta Club of Pittsburgh, and I'm a psychologist. And what I wanted to say is a little different. I was treating some years ago a man who was a pedophile in his mind. He hadn't acted on it. And he denied he was because he was only interested in young women, girls from 11 to 16. And the reason I want to tell you the story is we need to use language very carefully. When we are calling girls, young women, that gives a different idea of who they are. We know that's really true in a lot of women, a lot of girls in the Black culture because they're assumed to be older and not protected as much. So really, and my friends know that every time somebody says it's a young woman, I tell them this story. But I think it's really important because we unconsciously allow a different way of looking at girls that doesn't protect them. And so I just wanted to say, let's also be careful of how we talk to people about what they're doing. These are children. These are not young women.
Yes.
I'm going to propose we take a 10-minute break now. It's after lunch and people may need to run to the restroom. Let's meet back here at 3 o'clock and we'll do our breakout sessions. As you head out, we have a correction that the New York governor has not signed the legislation. That was a mistake at the table. So we still need Governor Cuomo to sign the New York legislation. It will be presented to him sometime this year in New York State.
For the ZontaUSA.org website, So we now have new content going up about every week to every 2 weeks regarding an issue that the USA caucus subcommittees are working on. So please check out zontausa.org and follow Zonta USA on Facebook. This is where your advocacy teams from the USA caucus are posting resources and relevant information. Okay, everybody ready? Here we go. Pivoting to Donna. This is Donna Pollard. She's the founder of Survivors Corner in Louisville, Kentucky, and she is a survivor of child marriage and an advocate not only in Kentucky, but throughout the region to end child marriages.
So much. Thank you, Teresa and Brady. That was incredibly powerful.
Echo again, there is an echo. Catherine? There's an echo.
Yeah, there's an echo. I'm looking at my tech people. They're working furiously. I think we need to turn off the podium mic or turn. Let's try it again.
They can't hear.
The sound is fuzzy. Should we turn on a mic up here? No, Ellen's saying no. She says, wait. Okay, it's going to take us a minute. Keep on working at your tables. Another change in order, what we'd like to do is to invite any tables to come up to one of the two microphones and report back on what you are working on, what you've learned, what was valuable having someone from another state at your table, or any other insights that could help other groups. So I'll invite any and all of the tables to come up to the two microphones and report back, and then we'll do Donna as our ending feature. Any volunteers?
If you don't volunteer, we'll just start by the table and have all of you come up one after the other. All right, start with District 9. Can you go up there and report, please? Anything you looked into, some whatever on the worksheet.
Yes, okay. We've got into a lengthy discussion earlier, and we're still talking about it. However, in terms of what partners would we use, and I don't think any of these are unknown, United Nations America We starting to use them in Orange County, and I've been kind of force feeding this to the other clubs in California, District 9. UNICEF, okay, I participated with them on speaking to different legislators within our Congress and talking about child marriage, right? Again, we didn't speak to the senators or the reps, but we did speak to their staff, and doing that, sometimes you got to push and push, okay? Unchained, of course, I relied on Unchained when doing the child marriage for Orange County, so they were very helpful. We have a new organization called Coalition 365 in California, in Orange County. I'm a little bit unsure if we should continue to pursue with the organization, but what the individual who heads that up has managed to do just within Orange County is she spoke to 4 different city supervisors, county board of supervisors and city supervisors about child marriage issues. And they have just passed a statement that says, okay, we are behind, no child under 18. So that's as far as we did get. We needed another 3 hours. Sorry.
At least you got the process going, right? Like you start thinking in methodically about it. Next table, District 8.
If we hold it further away, is that better? Ah, okay, so we'll hold it further away and we'll ask the table for District 8. Helen, do you want to report back? Since you're holding a paper and looking expectant? She did.
I'm Helen Garber from Portland, Oregon. Don't really have anything to report here. In Oregon, the age is 17. And there was a bill, actually just this year, but it died in the Judiciary Committee. So we're almost there, but not quite.
Why was your bill in the Judiciary Committee? That's an interesting location.
I don't know.
Okay,
It died there.
got it. Yep. Okay, Jean Ann.
So we've got 3 states
Yep.
at District 8. And it basically said that the HB 1883 failed to pass. So by Googling and going through there, there was a bill, which I couldn't read. The print was so small and so fine, I couldn't read it. Was proposed in February of 2019. And then it came back up in January of 2020. And I found a digest of the bill. And what I thought, I mean, I wouldn't pass the sucker either, because it said that it would dissolve any marriages if either partner was under 18. Well, who's going to want to go in there and disrupt that? I mean, you would if they were both 10 and 12, or 10 and married to a 30-year-old, but it didn't say that. It wasn't any ifs or buts in there. And and then of course it's just full of it. We're at 17 in Washington, but it's full of exceptions,
Yep.
unless there's an exception. Well, what exception? And then it just is wide open. And Alaska was the same way, that the age is 17 unless there are exceptions. And it went on and on and on about how many different ways there could be an exception. So that's what we got going on in the District 8.
Great. Who else wants to report back? Anybody get really excited about where they got to? Okay.
Hi,
Hi.
I'm Katrina Wilhelm from the Zonta Club of San Captiva, Florida, and a whole bunch of Floridians and no South Carolinians. So we decided to pick on South Carolina. Okay. Okay. The South Carolina child marriage was the minimum age is 16. Between 2000 and 2018, 5,443 minors were married. A strong bill, Bill 591, was introduced by Senator Hutto and Senator Shealy on 2/23/2021. The Senate session ended mid-May without any effect. But fortunate, the bill will remain in place for 2022. They had Evie Lane that testified as a survivor. Governor Henry McMaster is going to sign it into law, they say. Zonta Club of Columbia and the Zonta Club of Myrtle Beach with Betty Huban as the district aide. Is that right? Yay. District chair is one of the advocates, and the Post and Courier of Charleston had a really great article about it. So I don't know who's opposed, but sorry, we couldn't figure that one out.
That's a great start. That's a great start. The pieces are all there. Super, thanks. Yes. Okay, great. Okay, I'm going to let Denise report and then we'll run it.
Hi, everyone. Denise Sylvester and Barb Swartzel from District 15, Michigan. We've been working on ending child marriage. We first did an advocacy day to educate our legislators about the fact that there is no minimum age to marry in Michigan in 2019, and the legislators were shocked. We had hoped they were going to bring the bills that are in the House to the floor for a hearing in end of 2020. Well, we had hoped for 2019, then we were told 2020, and COVID kind of interrupted the lame duck session. So they were reintroduced into another committee this year. One of the great things from our advocacy day is these bills only had 3 co-sponsors in the prior legislative session. In this legislative session, they had about 15 co-sponsors each. So our advocacy efforts did actually increase awareness and encourage more representatives to be involved. However, we have a representative in the committee that these bills are being held who has said he will decide, he's the chair, he will decide who gets to marry and when. So, yeah. So on the coalition, we, started tagging him in social media, and he didn't like that. So he has said he's not moving the bills. So prior to that, he was reluctant to move the bills, but he wanted 2 exemptions, one for emancipated minors and one for members of the military. So the members of the military exception, there's only one other state that has that, and that was introduced in 1976. So we have some survivors on the coalition, and we really wanted to get their feedback. Should we keep on pushing these bills in this legislative session with the risk that we're going to have these dangerous exceptions, or do we maybe wait for the next legislative session? And after hearing from them and talking amongst the coalition, we kind of decided let's reorganize, because we don't want a bill that has a dangerous exemption that then other states will follow. We don't want to tell people, hey, come join the military in Michigan and get your child bride. We don't want that. That should not be a perk of joining the military. So we're looking at other ways to try and convince them to bring it out for a hearing, and we're working on the Senate side. We're working on putting pressure on other representatives, and if all else fails this legislative session, we have a lot of stuff that are set up for the next legislative session. And in the meantime, we can continue our education efforts, because as we learned, a lot of people just had no clue what the law was when we did our advocacy day. So.
I want to add a couple of things. First of all, I'm going to tout a Michigan resource that may be available in a similar format in other states. I certainly hope it is, because if it is, it's a great resource. In Michigan, it's called the Citizen's Guide to State Government. It lists all the legislators. their districts with maps, which committees they're on, contact information, and all that sort of stuff. If you're in Michigan, or if your state has a similar booklet, ours are available free from your state legislators. If you can get them, get enough for your club, plus a few extra for your new members. I would also encourage you to see who your state legislators are. Most of them have coffee hours or discussion events in their districts. Attend, take club members to their coffee hours. Get to know your representative or your senator or whatever they're called in your state. Get to know their staff. I'm on a first name basis with the chief of staff of my state rep. I call and say, Jonathan, this is Barb. And he says, hi, what's up? What's Zonta doing? Those are the kinds of connections we need to make. But start by getting this. And I would suggest, if you're going to pass these out, just on the off chance that you have members who are not registered to vote, go to your clerk's office and pick up voter applications in enough copies that not only people who aren't registered can fill them out, but so that they can pass them out to friends who are not registered. So work the system and make friends with your legislators.
Excellent advice. Okay, let's go ahead and hear Donna. You ready, tech team? Let's give them a round of applause.
Teresa
They're
and
working
Brady,
magic.
That was incredibly powerful. I always enjoy hearing you share about the great work that Unchained is doing, and appreciate your advocacy and your allyship. And, I'll share with you all that so many of the statistics that Brady just mentioned are very relatable to my own personal experience, from where she talks about the inability to access protections. As you'll learn further into my story, I was turned away from a domestic violence shelter because I was not yet 18. So, these are just some of the reasons that it's so critical that we focus on ending child marriage and make sure that, in that process, we are reaching those that are facing forced and child marriages and really rallying behind them if they've already survived as well, from a supportive and trauma-informed manner, so that we're not creating additional harm in the process of that advocacy. Now, I will warn you that what I'm going to share with you is going to be uncomfortable. It will be challenging for me to share my personal experiences, even though I've been doing this since 2016. It's always challenging because it is very personal. And it's also going to be likely that it will be challenging for you to hear as well, as so much of my story highlights a disconnect in the systems that are supposed to protect children. But more importantly than this discomfort to me is the recognition of opportunity to bring those meaningful legislative reforms, as well as to highlight that power of resilience and hope that we can carry to advance our communities forward. And so I'll share with you that I grew up in an abusive household, and when I was 13 years old, my father died from lung cancer. The abuse and his illness and death were too much for my young self to be able to handle, and I ended up being admitted to Charter Behavioral Health in Indiana when I was just 14. It was a way for my mother to wash her hands of me, as she used to say so often when I was a child. But instead of receiving the treatment and coping skills to deal with the trauma that I had suffered, my vulnerability there was preyed upon by a 29-year-old mental health technician that worked at the facility. Again, I was just 14. My mother allowed us to have a dating relationship when I was released from Charter, and our relationship became sexual very quickly. I ended up living in London, Kentucky when I was discharged from charter, and this man lived in Jeffersonville, Indiana. We would still see each other nearly every weekend though, because either my mother would drive me up to meet him or he would drive down to be with me. And when he was pulled over once for a burnt out headlight, the police didn't question why a 15-year-old girl was in the car with him. And neither did any of the hotel staff, where I was taken by my mother and left alone with him for hours at a time. Just after I turned 16, my mother consented to me marrying him. He was nearly 31. I was still a resident of Kentucky at that time, and he had driven down from Indiana to take me to Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, where he thought we could get married without question, since it's a spot that's known for quick weddings. And he was right. And in fact, that was the first time that I started having this light bulb go off and, felt like I recognized something bad was about to happen. The clerk did not even look up from the computer when she asked which one is the minor. It was so cold and transactional. And again, really highlights the fact that with these laws on the books, it's very void of the humanity that these children experience when they're forced into an underage marriage. I ended up having to drop out of school before I completed the 10th grade because of the marriage. The day after the wedding, he took me to his new apartment in Clarksville, Indiana, and I tried to enroll in Clarksville High School, which was just up the street from the apartment complex that we lived in. But the assistant principal would not allow me to enroll at the school. She said that I would become pregnant quickly and that they could not have that at their school. And so I ended up having to begin working full-time at 16 years of age to provide for my then 31-year-old husband, who would spend his days getting high and drunk. And even though I tried to escape at both 16 and 17, I was refused housing by 2 different apartment complexes because I could not enter into a contract as a minor. And again, I was even refused refuge in a domestic violence shelter because I was not yet of legal age. So we currently have these laws on the books that allow children to be married, but we don't have the protections in place because once a child marriage occurs, we fall into such a gray area legally. And those who I would have expected to be able to turn to for protection also did not help. The police did not feel it was necessary to investigate further when the neighbors called because of the fighting in our home. And in fact, they would speak to my abuser, who manipulated them into thinking that I had emotional issues that he was trying to help me work through. I had no credibility. When I was 16, I became pregnant for the first time. My doctor didn't question the fact that my spouse was nearly 15 years older than me. And when I miscarried, they performed a section D&C at Clark Memorial Hospital, but it did not remove all of the placenta. I could have died 2 weeks later because I spiked a high fever from the toxins that the placenta was releasing in my body. And it took me 2 full days before I could convince my abuser to take me to the hospital and consent to me having medical care. I became pregnant again when I was 17. My daughter was born just about a month after I turned 18, and I spent my 18th birthday heavily pregnant, taken to a strip club by my abuser for his own gratification. Shortly after I gave birth, I was made to begin working there. Again, I had no credibility, and he was making sure of it. My final breaking point came when one day he was pressuring me to do something that I felt horribly uncomfortable with, and I stood my ground and said no. He then proceeded to choke me as my daughter, who was a baby at the time, saw him and laughed because in her innocent mind, we were playing. She didn't recognize that as violent, of course. And I knew in that moment that I had to get out for my own sake and hers, but I was in no position to take care of a baby when I was still a child myself, at this point living in public housing in New Albany, Indiana.
Tech team, do you think we're going to get her back? Working on it. Okay.
living in public housing in New Albany, Indiana. So the judge awarded custody to my abuser, who was a college graduate in his 30s. And the court also awarded him child support to be paid by me to him. At this point, a 21-year-old or a 20-year-old high school dropout, barely making above minimum wage. Let me be clear. The institutions and legal system of Indiana failed both me and my child on multiple occasions. The systems in Kentucky and Tennessee did as well. And though each of these seemingly insurmountable obstacles I've encountered would have been enough to destroy many, it has not and it will not silence me. Because what do I do when my credibility, my education, my body, my child, my income has been ripped away from me and given to my abuser, who's been able to hide his offenses behind a marriage license? The only option for me was to begin to fight to end child marriage by using my story across our nation and refuse to let this happen to another child. Despite the violence, the exploitation, the economic disadvantages, this perceived lack of credibility, I refused to hang my head in fear or shame any longer, because I believe that the reason that I survived all of these things is to use my experiences to protect other girls from being trapped in a life like I was, and to show my oldest daughter, even if from afar, that I have taken a horrible situation and done the best I could to make it right for others. And just to wrap up quickly, I have gone on to earn my bachelor's degree in business administration, and I graduated summa cum laude. I founded the nonprofit Survivors Corner that Teresa mentioned earlier to provide that supportive network for trauma survivors looking to make social justice changes in a trauma-informed manner. I also travel frequently as an advocate, giving testimony before legislative committees and as a keynote speaker, both nationally and internationally. And this determination that I was able to uncover within myself after identifying my resilience did lead to Kentucky passing Senate Bill 48 in 2018. That did put an end to child marriage through parental consent. It's not a perfect reform. It's not our preferred state, but making progress to me was something that we could achieve in the moment. And I share these things not to be self-celebrating to you, but to demonstrate the resiliency that comes from giving pain a purpose. And so through partnerships with Zonta International, through having such accomplished women leaders and really empowering survivors of this atrocity to share their experiences and their stories, I absolutely believe that we can continue this fight to end child marriage. And again, stop predators from being able to hide their offenses behind a marriage license. Thank you.
Thank you, Donna. I commend you for your courage and coming out and really speak up. And it is important because you.
So Donna's organization is Survivors Corner, and I recommend everyone check out her website. And if you're in this area, she can also connect folks in Indiana, Illinois, Kentucky, and Tennessee with survivors, and she's willing to do so. So we're so sorry that there was some kind of mix-up that she wasn't able to be here today, but hopefully you all are motivated by her personal story that illustrates so many of the points why we're working so hard to end child marriage in the USA and Canada. Thank you for all your hard work. But that is a wrap. You are free to take a quick break before the 4 p.m. sessions. There's a treasurer training, and there is a event here. Sharon's going to be talking about what's happening at Zonta International. I've been asked to rerun the video. Do you think you can get me to rerun that little yellow video one more time? Yeah, that first one.
So Zonta is political. Yeah, so the message is take back to your fellow club members, Zonta can be political. Zonta can be political and nonpartisan at the same time. We support policies and positions, not parties or people. Policies and positions, not parties or people. That's the difference between being political and nonpartisan. Here comes the video one more time. Share it widely.
Give me 1 second. I'm trying to.
We'll encourage you to watch it on your own and we'll pass the podium to Sharon.
So you want me to go? All right, I'm just trying to. I'm trying to get this back. And it froze, so you gotta give me 1 second.